Assalamu alaikum. This podcast has been brought to you by Seeker's Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. Help us spread the light of prophetic guidance to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Make a small donation at seekersguidance.org/donate. As little as $10 a month can help people find life-changing guidance.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Welcome back, brothers and sisters, to another podcast episode. We have been speaking about the signs and the wisdoms and the lessons from Surat al-Kahf and these lessons of ours. And as you recall, we had been speaking about four major themes out of Surat al-Kahf. That is the trial of faith with the youth, the trial of wealth, as the last episode we had with the owners of the garden. In this one, we're going to speak about the trial of knowledge. Now, again, Surat al-Kahf is an incredible chapter that we are told whoever recites Surat al-Kahf on Fridays, light and nur shall shine forth for him between the two Fridays. And Friday, as you know, is the best of days. It was the day in which Adam alayhi salam was created. It was on this day that he was granted entry into paradise, and it was on this day that he returned and came to earth from paradise. And it was on this day that resurrection will take place, the Mubarak and blessed day of Friday. So this is something that, again, we receive light from our feet all the way to the heavens between the two Fridays. Furthermore, it's also a protection from the impostor Christ, the Masih ad-Dajjal. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if anyone learns the first 10 ayahs of Surat al-Kahf by heart, they will be protected from the Dajjal. This hadith is related by Imam Muslim, which is an authentic hadith. Now, and also being Friday the best day and Adam was created in it, that's also actually a hadith. So in these lessons that we're reading weekly, inshallah, it's very important that we reflect upon what Allah Ta'ala is telling us and informing us and teaching us. And so this trial of knowledge is a story about two very important people. One of it is Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, who's this incredible prophet of Allah, one of the ulul azmi min ar-rusul, one of the 5 greatest of Allah Ta'ala's prophets. He is most famous for the miracle of being able to speak to Allah directly without an angel. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. Allah Ta'ala spoke directly with Musa alayhi salam. So this is an incredible ni'mah and a blessing, an incredible rank of Sayyidina Musa. He's, as I mentioned, out of over 124,000 prophets that were sent, according to one narration, he is of the top 5 ever to have walked the earth. Nonetheless, he is asked a question by the children of Israel during his time, and they asked him, O Prophet Musa, who is the most knowledgeable people in the lands? He says, I am. And Allah Ta'ala, that is not to say that is not true. Absolutely, Musa was the most knowledgeable, but Allah Ta'ala wanted to increase his prophet Musa alayhi salam, and also by extension teach us that knowledge comes in different forms. There's the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala, there's the knowledge that Moses did have, but there are types of knowledges that Moses didn't have. No one can truly know everything. Allah Ta'ala is the one that knows absolutely everything, the inward, the outward, that which is seen, that which is not seen. But Allah Ta'ala wanted Moses alayhi salam to learn some of this knowledge of which he didn't know. So he told him to travel to a place where 2 seas meet, and at that point they'll find one of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the same man who is known as al-Khidr or al-Khadr. Al-Khidr alayhi salam is called al-Khidr, which comes basically from the word green, and the scholars of tafsir explain that he was such a blessed Mubarak person that no matter what land he would sit, like if he sat on barren land, that land would turn green, the grass, the land. So he was that kind of an incredibly Mubarak person that wherever he sat, it actually turned green. And furthermore, what's really incredible is this person, Al-Khidr, many scholars actually say that he is still alive and still living somewhere on the earth. There's two opinions amongst the ulama whether al-Khidr alayhi salam is alive or not. Some of the scholars say no, he has passed away, and they use a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ once told the companions in about 100 years from now. He said, no one who is on the earth now will be alive. So they take from that hadith that al-Khidr alayhi salam is passed on. But other scholars, they say, no, that didn't mean every single person literally, because, for example, Isa alayhi salam is alive in the heavens, and al-Khidr alayhi salam, through other proofs, is also that he's continued. Like after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, a man came, gave condolences to all the companions, and then he left. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Umar said that was al-Khidr. Not to mention many ulama and awliya and scholars and Gnostics and saints throughout history have actually recorded that they met al-Khidr alayhi salam. And miraculously, somehow Allah Ta'ala is maintaining his life, and he's continuing to live until the latter portion. He will pass away at one point, according to that opinion. So both of these men are very, very incredible people that are full of knowledge, faith, wisdom, etc. But nonetheless, they meet, right? They meet, and they travel, Musa, and he travels with a servant who is actually Yusha. Yusha alayhi salam was known as Joshua alayhi salam, Yusha, as Joshua, and he is a prophet of Allah, actually. So we have three prophets traveling basically together. So they travel with a basket, there's a fish in there, and Musa alayhi salam, after a very long journey, very tiresome. Now scholars have debated also where this actually took place, where Musa alayhi salam met him. Some say it's in Armenia, some say it's in Azerbaijan. There's different opinions, but the truth is that Allah Ta'ala knows best. Some said it's at the area of Jibr Tariq, which is Gibraltar, North Africa, West Africa, that region. Allah Ta'ala knows best, and He didn't tell us that place in the Quran, so the place is not necessarily important. The lesson is actually important. So, as commanded, Musa alayhi salam, Allah Ta'ala commanded him that they put a fish in a basket and set out. Again, his attendant Yusha alayhi salam was also with him, Prophet of Allah. During the course of the travel, they reached a rock where they lie down, resting their heads against it for some time. All of a sudden, on that spot, the fish moved, right? The fish had been like dead all this time. It moves, it left the basket and went into the sea. With this miracle, basically, where the fish came alive, slipped out of their basket, went into the sea, this is what they were. This is a sign from Allah, and then this is where the miracle took place. That's one miracle that took place, but also this is where Allah Ta'ala showed them their signs of where they are to meet this incredible person. And the fish that went into the sea, basically Musa alayhi salam got hungry and he asked Yeshua, where's our food? He said, I forgot to tell you, basically where we rested, it hopped out of the basket, but I forgot to inform you. He said, this is a sign from Allah. Let's go back to where it was, because I think this is where we'll meet him. And then they go back and they retrace their steps. And when they go back, Allah Ta'ala mentions this is where they find the servant of Allah. So the ayah says, فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. There they found a servant from ours, right? Attaining rahmatan min indina. We granted him mercy. This is ayah 65 of Surat al-Kahf, of which Allah Ta'ala says we granted him mercy from us. وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. And we enlightened him enlighten him with knowledge of our own, directly from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. This is why, actually, concerning the role of al-Khidr alayhi salam, some of the scholars say that he is a wali of Allah. If we know, awliya are the righteous saints, the righteous men and women, saints of Allah. Ala awliya Allah, ala inna awliya Allah la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun lalladhina amanu wa kanu yattaqun. Verily, the saints of Allah, they, upon them, neither fear nor grief will ever befall on them. They have no fear and they have no grief. Those who believe and who are God conscious and have taqwa. Allah Ta'ala mentions that these are the awliya. But Sayyidina Al-Khidr alayhi salam, some scholars say he's a wali, but the correct opinion is that he's actually a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we'll begin to tell you why. First of all, Allah ta'ala here says, number one, Attaining rahmatan min indina. This is indicative of a prophet. وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّ عِلْمًا. We directly gave knowledge to him. Furthermore, Musa alayhi salam, when he speaks to him, the first thing he says, وَقَالَ لَهُ مُوسَى alayhi salam, هَلْ أَتَّبِعُكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُعَلِّمَنِي مِمَّا عُلِّمْتَ رُشْدًا. Musa alayhi salam, now again remember, he's a prophet of Allah. He says, may I follow you, provided that you teach me some of the right guidance that you have been taught. Now he says to him, قَالَ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. He said to him, Al-Khidr told Musa, you certainly cannot be patient enough with me. And then, and he tells him further, he says, and how can you be patient with what is beyond your realm of knowledge? Musa alayhi salam says, قَالَ سَتَجِدُنِي إِن شَاءَ اللَّهُ صَابِرًا وَلَا أَعْصِي لَكَ أَمْرًا. You will find me patient, insha'Allah, because we're only patient because Allah wills it and allows it and creates that patience within us to be able to be patient. And I will not disobey any of your orders. And then Al-Khidr alayhi salam says, then if you follow me, do not ask me about anything until I myself clarify it to you. This is the condition. So notice that Musa alayhi salam says, can I follow you? Can I follow you? A prophet doesn't follow except a prophet. So there's many, anyway, not to go too much into that, but that's the correct opinion. Now they go and they travel. So they set out, but after they boarded a ship, they go on a ship, and some people basically helped them in the kind, and perhaps they paid for it, but they crossed the sea with it. In the middle of this trip, this man, Al-Khidr alayhi salam, he makes a hole in their boat. He takes one of the planks and breaks it. Musa protested. He said, have you done this to drown its people? You've certainly done a terrible thing. Again, Musa alayhi salam, he's objecting. He said, Al-Khidr alayhi salam said, did I not tell you that you cannot have patience with me? And then Musa pleaded. He said, excuse me for forgetting, but do not be hard on me. So Musa pleads. So they proceed until they come across now another situation where there's a young boy, there's a boy, and then he goes and he kills him. Al-Khidr kills the man, this young boy. Musa protested. He says, أَقَتَلْتَ نَفْسًا زَكِيَّةً بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا نُكْرًا. Have you killed an innocent soul who killed no one, this young child? You have certainly done a horrible thing. Again, Al-Khidr says, did I not tell you cannot have patience with me? And Musa says, if I ever question you about anything after this, then do not keep me in your company, for by then I would have given you enough of an excuse. So they move on, and this is verse 77, still in Surat al-Kahf. Allah Ta'ala then says, so they moved on until they came to a people of a town. They asked for food, but the people refused to give them any hospitality. There they found a wall about to collapse, and then Al-Khidr alayhi salam, he goes and he builds the wall and erects it properly, and fixes it for this, apparently for this city, these people. Moses alayhi salam, he protested. He said, if you wanted, you could have demanded a fee for this. You could have basically charged him for that, not just put up a wall for free, for no reason. He says, هَذَا فِرَاقُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكَ. He says, this is the parting of our ways. سَأُنَبِّئُكَ بِتَأْوِيلٍ مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. Now I will explain to you what you could not bear patiently. Remember that Musa alayhi salam told him from the beginning, Al-Khidr alayhi salam told Moses that if you come with me, don't question about anything until I tell you. But he kept questioning at all these different 3 points without being informed. So now Al-Khidr is going to inform him of everything, why he did it, the reason. So Moses understands it was not random acts. They were not obviously any evil act, but at the same time there was a reason for everything. He says, as for the ship, it belonged to some poor people working in the sea. So I intended to damage it. I intended to damage it, for there was a tyrant king ahead of them who seizes every good ship by force. So basically, if the tyrant comes to seize their ship and he sees that it's broken, he'll leave their ship alone. They can keep their ship, and then they get some wood, and that's actually very easy for them to fix it. But the king, he didn't want to take any boat that needs fixing, and it's an easy fix, and they can actually keep their boat. So that's the first reason. Second, he said, as for the boy, his parents were true believers, and we feared that they would pressure them into defiance and disbelief. And so we hope that their Lord will give them another more virtuous and caring in his place. Now, this child, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically is going to replace that child with somebody who is way better. It will be good for the parents, and it was a mercy also for the child ultimately. So Allah ta'ala, He did that for them as well. As for the wall, now that was an interesting one too, right? So as for the wall, it belonged to two orphan boys in the city. Under the wall was a treasure that belonged to them, whether it was of gold and silver, etc. So and their father had been a righteous man. Now in the ayah it actually does mention وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا, and their father was a righteous man. So your Lord willed that these children should come of age and retrieve their treasure as a mercy from their Lord. I did not do it all on my own. This is the explanation of what you could not bear patiently. Now, in this Abuhuma Saliha, their forefather was righteous, the scholars mention that this is actually seventh grandfather of these two orphan boys. This was the seventh grandfather whose righteousness benefited even these young orphan boys. And this is why the scholars, they mention that the righteousness of a man would affect 7 generations down of his offspring. That a man's righteousness would affect his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, all the way down 7 generations. So this is why if one could be righteous and be upright, this will affect generations. So subhanAllah, it's an incredible ayah that does give us a lot of hope, right? That inshallah we've all had, many of us, righteous forefathers, inshallah, will benefit from their du'as, etc. So he does say something here that I want to bring our attention to. He said, I did not do that of my own accord. This is why the scholars also explain that al-Khidr alayhi salam was acting on the commands of Allah. And also this goes a little more deeper as to how was al-Khidr alayhi salam doing things outwardly that didn't appear to be correctly. So there's many lessons from it, and I don't want to expand on that as this kind of opens up another big topic. But the general thing is that al-Khidr alayhi salam was acting and doing things in a certain department of existence that others are not allowed to go into. And that's why he said, I didn't do this out of my own accord. Because if he did it out of his own accord, that would have been haram. He didn't do that. He did it because it was a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of the scholars of tafsir of the Quran, they speak that there's these, that there's angels who carry out the commands of Allah ta'ala. Like for example, if something was written for you and it was meant to hit you, the angels will make sure that that occurs. If something was not meant for you, was not written for you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the predestination or qadr, then that would never happen. And the angels, they're protective guardian angels that'll make sure that that doesn't happen. Al-Khidr alayhi salam was in this case acting more in that type of a role, where he was taking an active role at fulfilling what the destinies of those situations were, but there was a wisdom behind all of those things. And this is why the other lesson we derive from Surat al-Kahf is that there is an outward to a lot of things. There's an outward to what we see in the world, but their inward realities are only known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here Allah ta'ala informed Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam of these realities. This is why he acted upon direct knowledge, revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and command. That doesn't fall into a normal person, right? This is why he's a prophet of Allah. So this is a trial of knowledge, and there's many lessons we can learn from it. But I wanted to focus on a particular angle of this story. This story ultimately is about the benefit of seeking knowledge, the benefit of keeping good company. And there is a verse in the beginning that I read that one of the great ulama named Fakhruddin al-Razi, one of our great scholars, derived 12 lessons from a single verse of this series of ayahs that we kind of read, some of it in translation and some of it in just a little bit of the Arabic. And that is this ayah, that when Musa alayhi salam saw him, what did he say? This ayah 66, he says, قَالَ لَهُ Musa. Musa said to him, listen to this, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words. 8 words. In these 8 words, Musa says, هَلْ أَتَّبِعُكَ, may I follow you, عَلَىٰ أَن تُعَلِّمَنِي, so that you may teach me مِمَّا عُلِّمْتَ, of what you have been taught of rushda, or right guidance. Okay, sounds pretty simple, but let's look at all these lessons that Fakhruddin al-Razi has derived from these 8 words in this verse of the Quran. Lesson number one is, to learn from any teacher, you have to take them as a leader that you follow. And the word that I use here, this is again, Allah is the one teaching us this through the Quran, right? So He says, أَتَّبِعُكَ, that I may follow you. Following is a quality of a teacher. When you have a teacher, you're a good student, you must follow your teacher. The second lesson and benefit of good etiquette with knowledge and lessons that we learn concerning knowledge is number 2, that he sought permission. The word hal in Arabic language is a question. It's inquiring. May I? Hal attabi'uka. May I follow you? So seeking permission in order to learn. The third benefit is in order to teach me. So he says, in order that you teach me, this is something that we see humble people do. Musa alayhi salam was the most knowledgeable of the people, but he was not arrogant. He's a prophet of Allah. He has perfect qualities. But this is to teach us as well that a person who wants to gain knowledge can never be arrogant. If they think there's nothing for them to learn, they will never learn. Once one of my teachers, he explained it as when you have a jug full of, like almost all the way full to the top, and you want to take more water and add to it, well, because the jug is already so full, right? The water, or into this glass or case or vase, whatever it is, you're filling the cup all the way at the top. But if it's already full, it can only handle a tiny bit of water. But if it's completely empty jug, empty container, and you start to pour water in, it can handle a lot more water because it emptied itself out. So this is another thing. When you seek knowledge, you must empty yourself out of what you think you know, and then admit you don't know, and approach the teacher with humbleness and open yourself up to the possibility of all the types of knowledge that you'll learn. You can learn outward knowledge, but you can also learn inward knowledge. You can learn love, reliance, humbleness, lots of good qualities that you can learn from a teacher. Number 4, he says, مِمَّا عُلِّمْتَ, some of what you have been taught, right? So this is also acknowledging that a teacher has an incredible amount of knowledge. He didn't say, teach me everything you know, right? He said, teach me some of what you know. And I appreciate what God has given you. مِمَّا عُلِّمْتَ, of what Allah has taught you, right? Number 5 is also included in this is a gratitude towards Allah for granting him ilm to that. So by saying, I want to follow you in order that you teach me of that which Allah has gifted you, is an indirect way of showing gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards the good that he's done and granted him of knowledge. Number 6 is rushda. To pursue ilm means beneficial knowledge is that knowledge which leads to guidance and safety in the hereafter. Rushda is correct, right guidance. There's people who have knowledge but they don't have rushd. There's people who have knowledge but they don't have correct guidance. Our concern here is guidance and safety. Number 7 is connecting to the source of ilm, right? Ilm, knowledge, is a divine gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it requires that the person that possesses it show gratitude. But it's connecting, right? Musa alayhi salam didn't ask for this knowledge to be sent down from the sky. He wanted to go find this person, travel as far as he had to, and he did travel extensive amount of distance to find him. And then on top of that, he wants to keep company with him in order to follow him, in order to benefit some of the knowledge that he has, right? So this is connecting to that silsila and that connection to knowledge. Number 8, that you see one who has ilm to be an exemplar, right? So Musa alayhi salam he was obviously informed of that he has this knowledge, but he just didn't say, give me that knowledge. He said, I want to follow you. Who do you follow? You follow somebody who's an exemplar, right? Even in sports and celebrities and modern world, the people that affect the most people is somebody who's an example. Now, either they're an example, unfortunately, in this society of having a lot of money, having a lot of fame, but there's something that draws people to them. Us Muslims, we follow people because of their connection to Allah, right? So that's what's important. Has nothing to do with being famous even, has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do with social status or anything else. We follow a scholar because of their nearness to Allah, not to anything else, right? So that you see, so the number 8 again is to see somebody who has knowledge as to be somebody of an example, somebody you can follow. Allah Ta'ala says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have in the Messenger of Allah the greatest example, right? To follow, to be like, etc. And the scholars are the most closest to them, but here this is even a prophet, which is an excellent person to follow as well. And then he says, may I follow you. Strive to imitate more than just knowledge, but attabi'uka means that you just don't get knowledge, but that you work hard to become and follow the example of the one you're taking knowledge from. It's not enough just to learn from a scholar or for somebody who's a teacher, but to actually imitate them, because if they're imitating the Messenger of Allah, and they should, that's what gives them honor in their knowledge. And if a person is actually following them in that, then you are becoming like the way of the Prophet ﷺ, then you become Mubarak, and then others may follow you. Number 10, so on the next lesson, which is, so number 10 of these lessons is that it was known who is the teacher and who was the student. This was distinguishable very clearly. And this is important because always in knowledge, when you come to sit with somebody who has knowledge and you do not, and you want to take knowledge, you must play the role and understand that you're a student, not to put yourself forward in front of your teacher, right? And this would be a breach of adab and bad etiquette. But nonetheless, Musa alayhi salam, again, despite his incredible rank and honor and tremendous worth and all those gifts that we mentioned earlier, he still approaches Sayyidina Khidr as a student and treats him as the one who has knowledge. And again, that knowledge is attributed to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that it is Allah who gave it to him. And this is one thing for all students and teachers to recognize, that the blessing of knowledge is a trust that Allah gives. It doesn't make one person better than another unless they fulfill the rights of knowledge, which would be to remain humble, to teach for the sake of Allah. Ultimately, it's about giving victory and honor and increase to all the Muslims and to the religion of Allah. This is about serving the deen, not serving yourself, your ego, or any other motive. And we see that Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, he doesn't demonstrate any worldly reasons for his seeking of knowledge, which is important for all of us. Number 11, when he says, may I be your follower so you can teach me, shows that first he became a follower, thereafter seeking knowledge. And this is pretty much in line with what we had mentioned. But it also shows that the student, more importantly, and this is actually what I wanted to mention, is that the student should be at the service of his teacher. Now, it is not just that you're serving this teacher who has rights upon you, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, cousin of the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhahu, he said, I am the servant and slave of the one who teaches me one letter. So we do have in our religion this idea that if anybody teaches you even a letter in knowledge, they have rights over you. But nonetheless, it is not necessarily the sheikh that you also just serve, but it is the purpose for what the sheikh is serving, which is giving victory to the deen. When we say giving victory to the deen, we mean that, you help and assist to spread the religion. This was a great concern of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the concern was for the deen to be delivered and people are invited. Ultimately, we have an incredible good. We have the greatest blessing, which is the religion of Islam. But we should be able to share that blessing with others. So being at the service of the sheikh is to be at the service of the religion itself, right? And finally, a final benefit that we can take is by saying, may I be your follower so that you can teach me, shows that he didn't seek anything else from the knowledge of worldly matters, right? And this is pretty much what I already mentioned. So there is an agreement, there's this contract that I will follow you and you teach me. So there is no, I will follow you if you, give me this position, if you give me money, if you do this. No. May I follow you so that I may attain rushdan. And that's so beautiful because ultimately knowledge is not about being famous, about being illustrious, about gaining attention, about anything worldly. Knowledge is all about one thing. It is a means of guidance. And if knowledge doesn't serve the purpose of making you guided and make you to arrive at the pleasure of Allah, then as one of our teachers once said, knowledge is a means to attain the pleasure of Allah. If knowledge doesn't let us to get there, then we don't need or want knowledge. And this is something that my teacher would often say, is sometimes a person who is ignorant is in a better state than they were when they were knowledgeable. Because many people in our time, when they gain knowledge, they also gain a lot of arrogance. They gain and arrogance is terrible. Arrogance is terrible because any person who has knowledge but then sees his own ego, his own self, he sees himself in some elevated state that he's so great, then he's in the same place as Shaitan. Because Shaitan was arrogant and look what happened to him. Allah Ta'ala destroyed him, He put him in the hellfire, he's in the worst place anybody can be, and it was all due to his kibr and his arrogance. Knowledge that leads you to be humble, which is of course what Sayyidina Musa had, alayhi salam, despite of his very high, honorable place, that didn't make him be arrogant at all. He could have came to al-Khidr alayhi salam and said, do you know who I am? I'm Moses. And of course al-Khidr did find out who he was, but he could have said, I'm the one that Allah directly speaks to. I'm the one that the Tawrat was given to, etc., etc. No, he put all that aside. His only focus was that this man has knowledge that I don't. And his knowledge is going to make me get closer to my Lord, is going to earn the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is something that will increase my connection to my Lord and His pleasure. And that's all that mattered. So the trial of knowledge, brothers and sisters, in this episode, and what we're reminded every week on, is knowledge is the soul of our religion. Knowledge is the full energy and soul behind everything in our religion, right? One of the great scholars, Sayyid Muhammad bin Alawi al-Maliki rahimahullah, he said, every good that comes for this ummah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has always come and will continue to come through the medium of knowledge, through the means of knowledge, and those are the ulama that clarify and teach and guide humanity to the religion of Allah. And all evil and vice and hardship and all that is bad that comes to the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ is only because of a lack of knowledge, meaning because of ignorance. because of ignorance itself. And my teacher would always say these beautiful lines: وَالْجَهْلُ فِي هَذَا الزَّمَانِ الْفَاسِدِ هُوَ الْمُؤَدِّي كَثْرَةَ الْمَفَاسِدِ. That the prevalence of the prevalent, or we could say that the widespread of ignorance is the main cause and factor of all corruption. Or we could say it in other words to make it very simple: arrogance is the main cause of all of the corruption in the ummah right now. So by extension, or by mafhum al-mukhalafa, if we can look at the opposite here, if ignorance is the main cause of every corruption, then knowledge will be the cure and the solution to all our problems. But what is knowledge? It's not just information. It is what Sayyidina Musa said, مِمَّا عُلِّمْتَ رُشْدًا, so that I may attain correct guidance and increase in nearness to my Lord. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you and I lovers of knowledge, lovers of scholars, ulama and awliya and salihin. May we every single day of our life learn one thing that we didn't before. And in learning one thing every day and acting upon it, letting that be actualized and realized in our life, this would be the cause of a lot of good. 3 years, in 3 years' time, we would know over 1,000 masail, 1,000 different rulings if we study one thing every day. And that is a great cause. Imagine how much more things we can act upon and how much good will come in our lives. Inshallah, next week we will look at the next trial in Surat al-Kahf and its lessons, inshallah, for youth. May Allah bless you, increase you, and guide you to every good. Jazakumullah khair for listening. We'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Seekers Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. Visit seekersguidance.org to access reliable Islamic knowledge taught by qualified teachers. We offer a wide range of courses, podcasts, articles, and a world-class answer service. Support us in spreading free, reliable Islamic knowledge to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Visit seekersguidance.org/donate and make a small monthly commitment today. Our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Whoever guides someone to goodness will have a similar reward." So don't forget to share this podcast and spread prophetic guidance.